Ladies and gentlemen, many people live in a constant battle with themselves. They carry guilt for the past, pressure for the present, and fear for the future. They stand in front of the mirror not as a friend, but as a critic. They replay mistakes in their mind as if they were watching the same movie over and over again, forgetting that the real can be changed. The truth is, no one rises higher by beating themselves lower. Growth is never born out of self-abuse, but out of self-awareness. If you talk to yourself in a way that you wouldn't dare talk to your best friend, you're setting up your own prison. Life requires accountability, yes. It requires responsibility, yes. But it also requires grace, patience, and the ability to begin again. The farmer doesn't curse the soil because last season didn't bring the harvest he hoped for. He tills again, he plants again, he waters again. That's the model of life: try, fail, learn, repeat, and grow. So stop being so hard on yourself. Give yourself permission to learn slowly. Give yourself permission to be human. Remember, progress isn't measured by perfection, but by direction. So many people think the way to improvement is to whip themselves into shape with criticism. They believe if they push harder, scold louder, or shame themselves more severely, they'll somehow wake up one day transformed into the person they dream of becoming. But that's not how it works. Nobody flourishes under constant attack, not even when the attack comes from within. Think of a seed. You don't scream at a seed to make it grow. You don't criticize it for being small. You don't condemn it for not being a tree on the first day. You plant it, you water it, you give it sunlight, you protect it from weeds, and you allow time to do its work. That's growth. That's how greatness is built. The problem is, many of us treat ourselves like the seed we despise instead of the seed we nurture. We say things like, I should be further by now. I should know better. I should never have failed. And with every should, we dig the soil away from our own roots. We rob ourselves of the environment needed to grow. Here's the truth: growth doesn't come from beating yourself down. Growth comes from lifting yourself up with discipline, patience, and consistent effort. A student doesn't master mathematics by calling himself stupid every time he gets an equation wrong. He learns by practice, correction, and persistence. Now let's look at greatness. Greatness is not a product of pressure. It's a product of process. Athletes don't become champions because they punish themselves for losing a game. They become champions because they study the loss, learn the lesson, and return to practice. They correct without condemning. They build without breaking. Here's what you need to understand: you cannot demand fruit from a tree you never watered. If you want results, water your own life with encouragement. Feed your own mind with learning. Protect your own spirit from destructive self-talk. That's how you grow into greatness. Ask yourself, am I my own coach or my own critic? Coaches push you, but they also guide you. Critics tear you apart without building you back up. If your inner voice is only criticizing, you'll quit. But if your inner voice is coaching, you'll continue. So stop trying to whip yourself into becoming. It won't work. Plant yourself in good soil, meaning daily habits of reading, learning, practicing. Water yourself with encouragement. Protect your mind from negativity. And allow yourself time, because nothing great is built in a day. Greatness doesn't happen by accident, and it certainly doesn't happen by abuse. Greatness grows, and growth requires nurturing, not punishing. One of the greatest tragedies in life is not the mistake itself, but what we decide to believe about it. Too many people treat their errors as permanent scars rather than temporary teachers. They replay a wrong choice in their mind for years as though one bad chapter writes the whole book. But life doesn't work like that. A mistake is not a prison, it's a classroom. Think of it this way: when a child learns to walk, they fall dozens, maybe hundreds of times. Yet, no parent says, well, I guess walking isn't for you. No, the falls are part of the process. Each stumble teaches balance, and each attempt builds strength. The mistake isn't the end, it's the instruction manual for how to continue. But as adults, we forget this simple truth. We make a financial mistake, and instead of learning about money, we declare ourselves bad with finances. We make a poor decision in a relationship, and instead of growing wiser, we carry shame that weighs us down for years. We miss a business opportunity, and instead of taking notes, we convince ourselves we're not cut out for success. Here's the difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck. The ones who rise treat mistakes as feedback, not final judgments. They collect lessons like treasures. They write them down, study them, and refuse to waste the price they paid in pain. Meanwhile, those who condemn themselves end up making the same mistakes repeatedly because they never take the time to learn the lesson inside. Let me tell you this: every mistake has tuition. You've already paid for it with time, effort, or heartache. The real question is, will you walk away with the degree? Or will you keep paying the price again and again without learning? History is full of people who understood this principle. Inventors, leaders, entrepreneurs. They failed more times than they succeeded. But because they didn't condemn themselves, they could collect enough lessons to eventually create breakthroughs. Failure wasn't a label, it was a library. So here's what you need to do: shift your perspective. When you fall short, instead of saying, "I failed," ask, "What did this teach me?" When you make a poor decision, instead of drowning in regret, ask, "What knowledge did this give me for next time?" When you face embarrassment, instead of hiding, ask, "What wisdom did this moment offer me?" The goal isn't to avoid mistakes, because that's impossible. The goal is to avoid missing the lessons inside them. Every wrong step carries a right direction if you're willing to look closely enough. So, stop treating mistakes like life sentences. You are not defined by them. You are refined by them. Collect them, use them, and let them shape you into someone wiser, stronger, and more prepared for the future. Remember, mistakes are the tuition you pay for wisdom. Don't waste the payment. Earn the wisdom. If you stopped and listened to the way you talk to yourself every day, would you call it encouragement or abuse? Most people speak to themselves in ways they would never dare speak to another person. They call themselves names. They repeat negative labels. They exaggerate flaws. And they wonder why their confidence remains weak and their progress slow. Here's a truth worth remembering: the most important conversation you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. Your inner voice sets the tone for your life. If that voice constantly criticizes, you'll walk through life discouraged. If that voice encourages, you'll walk with confidence, even in difficulty. Imagine your best friend comes to you after making a mistake. They're upset, feeling low. Would you say, "You're hopeless, you'll never get it right"? No, you wouldn't. You'd say, "Don't worry, you'll do better next time. You've got what it takes." That's what a friend does. They lift, not crush. Now here's the question: why do you give kindness to others but deny it to yourself? If your dream is to succeed, you need to become your own ally, not your own enemy. Your mind listens to every word you say. If you tell yourself, "I'm no good at this," your mind accepts it. If you say, "I'm learning," your mind accepts that too. The words you choose are the seeds you plant in your future. Think about a coach. A good coach corrects mistakes, but always with the goal of improvement. They don't stand on the sidelines yelling insults. They give instruction, motivation, and vision. You must learn to coach yourself in the same way. When you fail, don't condemn yourself. Coach yourself. When you fall short, don't attack yourself. Guide yourself. The voice in your head can either be your greatest liability or your greatest asset. If you keep tearing yourself down, you'll eventually stop trying. But if you speak words of support, you'll find the strength to try again. Encouragement fuels persistence, and persistence eventually brings results. Here's something powerful. People often rise to the level of belief others have in them. A teacher, a mentor, a parent. When they believe in someone, that belief creates confidence. But what happens if no one is around to believe in you? Then you must become that voice for yourself. Believe in yourself the way you'd believe in a friend. This isn't about lying to yourself or ignoring reality. It's about balancing truth with encouragement. Instead of saying, "I'm terrible at this," say, "I'm not good yet, but I'm improving." Instead of saying, "I failed," say, "I learned something that will make me stronger next time." Speak in a way that fuels progress, not paralysis. Remember, the words you repeat shape the future you create. So, speak to yourself with the same encouragement, patience, and belief you'd give to someone you love. Because if you don't support yourself, who will? You cannot shame yourself into greatness, but you can speak yourself into courage. Talk to yourself as a friend. And soon you'll find yourself walking with more strength, more persistence, and more hope than you ever thought possible. One of the greatest enemies of growth is not failure itself, it's the judgment that follows it. People don't usually stop because they fail. They stop because they judge themselves so harshly that they become paralyzed. They convince themselves they're not worthy, not capable, not ready. And the moment you take on those labels, you stop moving forward. Think about it. A child learning to ride a bicycle falls several times. But if every fall was followed by judgment, "You're clumsy. You'll never learn. This isn't for you," the child would give up before ever riding. It's not the fall that destroys the dream, it's the judgment attached to it. Judgment freezes progress because it focuses on the problem, not the solution. It traps you in shame instead of pushing you into action. You keep replaying what went wrong instead of asking what you can do next. And the longer you sit in judgment, the harder it is to rise. Now, encouragement works the opposite way. Encouragement doesn't deny mistakes, it acknowledges them while pointing forward. It says, yes, you stumbled, but that means you're learning. Yes, you fell, but that means you're moving. Encouragement gives permission to keep trying, and progress only comes when you keep moving. Think of the great achievers in history, athletes, inventors, leaders. They all faced moments where judgment could have paralyzed them. But what kept them going was encouragement. Sometimes it came from a coach, sometimes from a mentor, and sometimes from within themselves. The words of encouragement became fuel, turning setbacks into stepping stones. Here's the truth: judgment looks backward, encouragement looks forward. Judgment says, look what you did. Encouragement says, look what you can do. One holds you hostage, the other sets you free. But you have to choose which voice you listen to. If you feed yourself constant judgment, you'll hesitate, procrastinate, and eventually quit. If you feed yourself encouragement, you'll act, improve, and eventually succeed. This doesn't mean you ignore accountability. Encouragement isn't blind positivity. It's constructive. It acknowledges the mistake, but shifts the focus toward learning and growth. That's how progress is built, not by condemning yourself for what happened, but by encouraging yourself to do better next time. So ask yourself, am I paralyzing myself with judgment or propelling myself with encouragement? Because your answer determines your future. Remember, no one ever reached their highest potential by constant self-condemnation. But many have risen from failure after failure because they chose encouragement over judgment. That choice, every day, decides whether you stay stuck or move forward. Progress requires encouragement. Choose it, speak it, live it, and watch how far you can go. There's a dangerous idea floating around that success means you never fall. That the truly strong, the truly talented, or the truly disciplined somehow go through life without stumbles, without setbacks, without struggles. But that's simply not true. Everyone falls. Everyone fails. Everyone faces moments when life knocks them flat. The difference between those who grow and those who stay stuck isn't in whether they fall. It's in how quickly they get back up. Think of a boxer. Even the best in the world takes hits. Even the champion can be knocked down. But the fight isn't lost because of the fall. It's lost if the fighter stays down. Growth in life is the same way. Every time you fall, you get to decide, will this knockdown last a minute, a month, or a lifetime? In the beginning, when you're inexperienced, it might take you a long time to rise again. Maybe one mistake ruins your confidence for years. Maybe one failure makes you hesitant to try again. That's normal. But it's not where you're meant to stay. The goal of growth is to shorten the gap. What used to take years to recover from now takes months. What used to take months now takes weeks. And eventually, what used to crush you for weeks will barely slow you down for a day. That's growth, not perfection, not immunity from mistakes, but resilience practiced over time. Think about a child learning to walk. At first, when they fall, they might sit there crying, unsure if they should even try again. But with encouragement and practice, the falls get shorter. They bounce back quicker. Soon, a stumble barely slows them down. That's the picture of maturity, not never falling, but learning to rise faster. So ask yourself, how long does it take you to recover from disappointment? How long do you carry regret before you move forward? How long do you sit in self-pity before you rise to action? Your answer will tell you how much you've grown. Here's the good news: resilience is like a muscle. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. The first few times you fall, it feels impossible to get back up. But if you keep practicing, you'll discover that bouncing back becomes second nature. The sting of failure won't last forever. It will simply become fuel for your next attempt. Great lives aren't built on uninterrupted victories. They're built on repeated comebacks. Each time you shorten the distance between a fall and a rise, you gain momentum. And momentum, once it builds, carries you further than perfection ever could. So stop aiming for a life without falls. That doesn't exist. Instead, aim for a life of quick recoveries. Aim to be the kind of person who, when knocked down, doesn't waste time blaming, regretting, or wallowing, but chooses instead to stand, learn, and move forward. Growth isn't the absence of falls. Growth is the speed of your recovery. And the faster you rise, the further you'll go. One of the greatest traps people fall into is carrying yesterday into today. They wake up in the morning, but instead of starting fresh, they replay old mistakes. They rehearse regrets. They drain today's strength by giving yesterday a second life. And then they wonder why progress feels so heavy. Here's the truth: every day delivers new energy. Every sunrise is a deposit into your account of life. But if you spend that energy reliving failures, you bankrupt yourself before you even begin. Yesterday's mistakes don't need today's attention. They already happened. The only thing you owe yesterday is the lesson. The energy belongs to today. Think of a runner. If they keep looking back at the stumble in the last lap, they'll never have the focus to finish the next one. The same is true for you. If you keep staring at yesterday's fall, you won't see today's opportunities. And opportunities have a short shelf life. They expire quickly. Here's something powerful. Failure is never as dangerous as the memory of failure. A mistake can be corrected, but when you rehearse it over and over, it grows larger than life. It becomes a giant in your mind, blocking you from using today's energy wisely. The problem isn't what happened. It's your decision to keep feeding it. But let me remind you, the past has no power except the power you grant it. Yesterday cannot walk into today unless you open the door. So stop giving it keys. Stop entertaining it. A bad choice, a wrong turn, a missed opportunity. That was yesterday's price. Pay it, learn from it, and move on. Think of the seasons. Winter doesn't stop spring from arriving. The earth doesn't say, because last season was harsh, I refuse to bloom again. No, spring comes, flowers grow, and the cycle of life continues. If nature refuses to let yesterday dictate today, why should you? Here's the better choice. Wake up each day and decide, this is fresh, this is new, this is untarnished. Yesterday may have carried mistakes, but today carries potential. You can't rewrite the past, but you can redirect the future. And the steering wheel is only in your hands today, not yesterday. The great danger of letting yesterday steal today is that you stack wasted days on top of each other. One day of regret becomes a week becomes a month becomes a year, and before you know it, you've surrendered your future to your past. Don't do that. Protect your energy. Guard today's strength like treasure. Use it to build, to learn, to act, to move forward. When yesterday comes knocking, smile and say, you've had your turn. Remember, every day is a fresh gift. Don't waste today carrying baggage that belongs to yesterday. Put it down, take the lesson, and walk forward lighter and stronger. It's interesting. Most of us are far more patient with other people than we are with ourselves. When a friend makes a mistake, we say, don't worry, you'll figure it out. When a child struggles to learn, we gently encourage them. It takes time, keep practicing. When a coworker is slow to improve, we say, it's okay, progress is a process. But when it comes to our own mistakes, struggles, or slow progress, we show no mercy. We tell ourselves, you should know better. You should be further by now. You should have mastered this already. Isn't it strange? We know growth requires time and patience, but we deny that truth when it comes to ourselves. Let me tell you something important. Patience is not a weakness. It's wisdom. Just as a seed takes time to become a tree, just as seasons take time to change, just as skill takes time to develop, so do you. And if you can grant that understanding to others, you must learn to grant it to yourself. Why is this so vital? Because impatience creates frustration, and frustration creates quitting. Many people don't fail because they can't succeed. They fail because they lose patience with their own process. They forget that the journey is supposed to take time. Think of the craftsman who builds a violin. He doesn't rush. He sands carefully. He shapes deliberately. He knows the value is in the details, and details cannot be hurried. The same is true for your personal growth. The masterpiece of your life cannot be rushed. It requires steady, patient effort. Now, here's a principle worth remembering. If you can wait for others to grow, you can wait for yourself to grow. If you can encourage others to be gentle with their journey, you can encourage yourself in the same way. Your life is not a race against anyone else's timeline. The only thing that matters is that you are moving forward, step by step, day by day. Patience also means forgiveness. When someone you care about falls short, you forgive them. You remind them of their worth. Why not extend that same grace inward? Why not look at yourself and say, yes, I fell, but I am still worthy. Yes, I stumbled, but I am still growing. Yes, I am slow, but I am still moving. Remember, impatience steals joy. Patience restores peace. And peace creates the environment where real growth can flourish. So the next time you find yourself frustrated with your own pace, pause and ask, if this were my friend, what would I say to them? Then say that to yourself. Because the truth is, the journey doesn't just need discipline and effort. It needs patience. And the same patience you give others, you owe to yourself.